Attorney Joe Tacopina. My first question is, considering, Mueller was against this, the DOJ was against it, the FEC was against it, Cyrus Vance was against this, and even Alvin Bragg, when he first took office, seemed against this. My question is, now that Bragg showed his great courage, is he going to get in the courtroom with you, Joe Tacopina? Is he going to try this case start to finish?
Oh, he'll be in the courtroom. I think he'll be about 3 or 4 rows back. But when and if the bell rings at a trial in this case, I have a hunch he's going to be a spectator, not a participant. I agree with you. It would be the courageous thing to do when you're doing something so historic, so monumental, bringing an indictment against the first former president in the history of this country. You should try that yourself, being that you're the one who's pulling those strings. But I can't imagine that happening. Of course, I would welcome that, but I can't imagine it happening, Sean.
All right, let's go through what the day will be like tomorrow. Reports are that you and the president will arrive. I assume others will be with the president at about 11 a.m. You'll be before a judge around 2:15. We know that the president will get a mugshot. We know he will be fingerprinted. Is he going to be perp walked? Do we have any guarantee they won't do that? Will he be handcuffed? Do we have any guarantee they won't do that? Anything extraordinary that you expect tomorrow, or is it all planned out?
What's extraordinary is that tomorrow's actually happening. That's what's extraordinary. I just cannot believe.
Beyond that point, I agree.
I feel like we're on the eve of destruction. It's just like surreal to me based on this charge, these allegations. This is a federal election committee and a federal election law rule that governs here. Here's a state prosecutor. When the FEC has turned this down, the federal prosecutors have turned this down. Anyone who looked at it has turned down, said there is no violation. Here, a state prosecutor is now going to bring a case based on a federal law violation that doesn't exist according to the federal authorities. It's surreal. It's shocking. But, look, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow other than that we'll be pleading very loudly not guilty before the judge, and then we'll go from there.
All right, let me ask you, there's been a lot of reports today that there might be a gag order placed on Donald Trump, a presidential candidate. That has happened in the past. Roger Stone, I think Manafort, I don't fully remember, but I know it happened in Stone's case. Are you telling me there's a possibility that they would prevent a presidential candidate from using his free speech rights and defending himself?
Can't be. Won't happen. I don't believe anyone's even looking for that. I mean, that would really set ablaze the passions and the tempers that already have been inflamed by this case. People view this as a political persecution. Those numbers you showed, Sean, in your introduction regarding his increase in popularity in the polls and the amount of money that's come in the last 3 days are because people are infuriated, and they are now understanding that weaponization of the justice system is a real thing. But, attempting to gag a United States citizen who is a defendant, not a lawyer, not a litigant, but a defendant in the case, especially that's a First Amendment violation, obviously, but has to be balanced against a right to a fair trial. But imagine putting a gag on Donald Trump when he's the front runner for the Republican Party for the presidential office. And imagine during the campaign, he's told, I can't speak about the case. So when people ask him questions, he has to just say, sorry, I have a gag order. Obviously, that's not going to happen. That would directly interfere with the election, as this prosecution has already done. That would further interfere with the election. There's no scenario where that's going to happen. I'm sure of that. I don't think that's even going to be requested.
All right, let me ask this. I know the president said he doesn't believe he can get a fair trial. You've tried over 100 cases in New York City over the course of your career, very successfully in most instances. My question to you is, this is a city where Democrats outnumber Republicans nearly 10-1. I mean, you've got a seated jury. The odds are the overwhelming number of potential jurors in this case are going to be registered Democrats. Democrats in this country, right, they seem to bubble and fizz like Alka-Seltzer and water just at the very name Donald Trump or the face of Donald Trump. So I wonder, I mean, you don't have to give away your strategy, but I have doubts if he can get a fair trial here. I really do. And why not have a change of venue to make sure that it's in, at least a 50-50 part of New York State?
We're absolutely going to obviously consider all things. You know, the legal team, has been meeting and discussing, and there'll be a host of motions we're going to make, including, I'm telling you right off the bat, a motion to dismiss based on selective prosecution, prosecutorial misconduct. There will be those other things considered, like a venue change and other motions that wouldn't be right to get into at this point. We first have to see this indictment. But you know, look, at the end of the day, if this gets to a jury, and it really shouldn't get to a jury because this case should be dismissed on the law, but if it gets to a jury, you know, what I would do, what our team would do, what Todd and Susan would do, is simply look, you know, the jurors in the eyes and say, you understand you're not voting for a political office here. This is not a presidential campaign or a gubernatorial campaign. This is someone's life and liberty. And this is much more serious than what side of the you know, political spectrum you're on. This is someone's life and liberty and whether they're deemed a criminal for the rest of their life. And most people that want to be able to look themselves in the mirror for the rest of their lives are going to follow the law and going to follow the facts. If they follow the law and the facts in this case, if we get to a jury again, this should be the quickest verdict in the history of the United States of America. So look, we have to weigh all things, and we do have to consider the bias against President Trump in the city, and we will weigh it. But ultimately, people who are going to be sitting in judgment of him, if it gets that far, are going to really have to be so conscientious of their oath and their duty and the rule of law in this country. Because if we just say, it's Donald Trump, we don't have to worry about it, like you said, there's a Republican prosecutor in Texas that's going to be gearing up for a Democrat now, and this is what we're going to use the justice system for, to be a political tool in this country. And rule of law is dead if that happens, Sean.
You've said a number of times in this interview, if they get that far, are you not expecting it to get that far?
Let me be very clear. The only reason it would not get that far is because the case would be dismissed on papers, okay? There is zero chance where Donald Trump is pleading to anything here. He committed no crime. He committed no wrong, not a misdemeanor, not a felony, not a traffic ticket. There is nothing here. So I am talking about this case should fall on the law. And we're going to be pushing that, obviously. We have to evaluate everything, including the indictment. But I still can't believe this is going to survive our vigorous motions to dismiss.
Let's talk about the statute of limitations, the New York state law, which is a misdemeanor, and this unprecedented novel idea never has been used before of marrying it to an election law, federal election law. Do you think the statute of limitations has expired on both the state law and the federal level?
So there's misdemeanors and there's felonies, right? Statute of limitations for misdemeanors are 2 years. For felonies in New York State, they're 5. There's a question as to whether Governor Cuomo's extension of the statute of limitations by a year and 45 days during the COVID period will hold. Even with that, it's very close, and the math has to be done. There's a lot of exemptions, a lot of issues. That is one of the things, Sean, we're going to be looking at. I mean, this is the oldest case in the books of all the things they were investigating. And it just strikes me as so incredibly odd that they're going to bring a case that's weak on the law, that's going to have problems surviving serious motions, that is this old, that is this petty, that has nothing to do with the election or the campaign, but was a personal civil settlement that's done every day, that was done between a lawyer and another lawyer when they orchestrated a settlement arrangement that the president wasn't even privy to at the time. He didn't even sign the settlement agreement. And subsequently later, while he was already in office, his organization paid some legal fees for that as they were invoiced. It's amazing to think that this is a case that they believe falls under the FEC rules and regulations, the Federal Election Committee's rules and regulations, and violates any of those laws. It does not by a long shot. And we've been with some terrific FEC people. Bradley Smith and I have spoken, and he's confirmed that. So I really just don't know where they think they're going to wind up here. If it was just to get the, 15 minutes tomorrow to get him into a courtroom and whatnot, who knows?
Let me ask you a final question. Considering we all know what Bragg said, he ran a campaign to get Donald Trump, one man, one company, the Trump Organization, one family, the Trump family. Do you believe that this is selective prosecution and prosecutorial abuse on his part? And is there any remedy for you on that level?
Of course, that is why it is selective prosecution. You know, again, if he was not named Donald Trump, there would be no indictment. That's a fact. I've said it to you many times. I saw Andrew McCarthy, I think, echo that. There would not be a case if this wasn't Donald Trump. You know, and so that's where, you know, we're really gone amok here. You select the person that you don't like, Donald Trump, and then you try and find a crime. So it is mind-boggling to me that we're here. We are here, but it's just not going to hold up. So these you know, charges they're cobbling together to try and make felonies out of won't survive a challenge, a legal challenge.
All right, Joe Tacopina, the president's attorney, thank you for being here. We'll be watching tomorrow and get reaction from you tomorrow night.